Now, threading the needle. This is always the part where people struggle. Everyone, absolutely everyone, always struggles with threading the needle. So I'm going to show you one or two tricks to help you do it. So if you haven't done sewing before, if you've only done a little bit of hand sewing, you probably will go into it trying to take this and shove it in there somehow, but it doesn't really work. That's because your thread is, not only do you probably have more than one strand of it, but it's far too flexible to be trying to direct it with that much. Okay, what you want to do, first of all, you want to make sure that all these ends are even. Okay, so I'm going to take a scissors and just chop the ends there. So now they're all nice and even. So I have them all nice and even. The second thing you want to do, you don't want to have loads of thread showing. You want to have a very tiny amount of thread showing. So if you can see, that's even too much. Okay, you want it between the balls of your finger. You just want a tiny amount. You want to be barely able to see it. And you're going to take your needle. Now here I'm using 6 strands of floss and I'm using a chenille needle size 24. Okay, but this will work for any number of strands in whatever size needle goes with that. Okay, so again, you want a very tiny amount of thread showing, and you're going to guide the eye of your needle down to the thread. Okay, so you're going to just guide that through there, and see, goes through much easier. So once you have it there, just pull it through. All right, so you want your ends nice and even, and only a tiny bit of thread showing will make that much easier. Another way to do pretty much the same thing, if your ends are not even, if you're finding it difficult to get them even or whatever, you can also fold your thread over the needle, and you're just going to pinch. So again, I only have a tiny bit of thread showing. I'm pinching that around the needle. I'm pulling the needle out of the way, so I still have that tiny bit of thread showing. And again, I'm just going to guide the eye of the needle and the thread together. And I have them through, so I'm just going to pull. Okay, so that's 2 ways of threading your needle, which should work quite nicely. But if you are still having trouble, there's a wonderful little tool called a needle threader. So this is an embroidery needle threader, so it's probably a bit different to one you would get with a sewing kit if you have one of those. And basically what you do with that one, you put this hook through the eye of the needle. So depending on the size of the needle you use, you might be using the larger end, you might be using the smaller end. It depends on the size of the needle you're using. Okay, so I have my needle on the end there. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to put it, just keep my needle out of the way. I'm going to put my thread in that hook like that. Okay, so it's just folded around the hook, and then I'm going to take my needle and pass it back over the hook. Now I want to make sure that your needle is going over both ends of the hook there. It's not going just under, it's going over both ends of that little hook. And then just guide that hook through. It might take a bit of a wiggle, but guide it through. And there you have your needle threaded. Okay. Once you have your needle threaded, you're going to keep the needle at one end. So you have just a little bit of thread on one side. You have your needle, and then you have your longer piece of thread there. Okay, this is the best way to have your needle threaded. Some people will say to kind of double it up, so you have both sides the same length and you have your needle in the center. But if you have it like that, it's very difficult to kind of go back on any mistakes that you make or anything like that. So I find it's best to just have it with this one short end and one longer end. Okay. If you're using a stitch that starts off with a knot, you can see my video on how to start off with your stitching. I generally do start off with a knot. You can put a knot in the longer end. So you can do that just normally with a normal knot, or the way I like to do it, something called a magic knot, because it's absolutely magic. It's a life changer. So you're gonna take, this works for any amount of thread, whatever needle you're using with that thread. You're just gonna take the end of the thread and your needle, and you're gonna make kind of a circle with them. Okay, you're just gonna hold the end of the thread against the needle with that finger and thumb. Okay, so you've basically made a circle here. You're gonna take that thread, so where you're holding the end with the needle there, and you're gonna take that thread and just wrap it around the needle. Now, depending on how many threads you have in your needle, how big you need the knot, you can wrap it a different number of times. I have 6 strands here, so I really only need to wrap it once or twice to have a nice big knot and be nice and secure. If you're just using one strand, you might need to wrap it a couple more times to have a knot that's big enough to secure it in the fabric, okay? But here I'm going to wrap once, twice. That's plenty. I'm holding that wrap in that finger and thumb. So if I let go there, you can see it is wrapped around the needle. Now you want to keep that wrap tight enough that it is not unraveling, but loose enough that you can move the needle. Okay, you can move that wrap up and down the needle. Okay, you want it a little bit loose, but not too loose. Okay, so you want the right kind of tightness on that. And then what you're going to do, hold that wrap with the balls of your fingers there, and then you're going to pull the needle with the other hand, pull it through the wrap, down the thread, and when you get towards the end of the thread, just squeeze those fingers together and you have a knot. Ta-da! Okay, so very quickly, just again, you're making a circle, you're wrapping once or twice or however many times. You're going to make sure that wrap is loose enough for you to pull your needle through and just squeeze at the end, and you have your knot. So that's my magic little knot trick. So now that you have that, oh sorry, I keep shaking the camera. So now that you have that ready, you are ready to start stitching. So take a look at my other video on how to start a line of stitching, and you'll be stitching up masterpieces in no time.